Hey there, welcome back to my channel. In my last video, we were talking about how to get out of a creative rut, and I shared my experience and tips on how to deal with it. And in today's video, I wanted to talk about another fun way how you can make you feel excited about painting and creating art again. And this is by switching up your medium. Sometimes when you paint a certain way for too long using the same medium, you can get used to it because you know exactly what to do. And this can get boring because it's not challenging anymore. That's why changing things up can be really refreshing because you need to think in a new way and adjust to the medium you're using. And this can challenge you to think creatively and spark new ideas and excitement. For example, you would need to think about how to start the painting, how to use the medium, what style would work best, and how you can achieve it. And this can be really fun and refreshing. The fun part about different mediums is that you need to navigate them all a certain way. With watercolors, for example, you start with lighter colors first and then you build up the painting layer by layer. You also have to control the paint and water so you can use a variety of different techniques. You can make your painting look more realistic or loose, all with the help of water and paint. So for example, if you've been painting with watercolors for a while and in a certain style, why not try out a new way of painting something? You could experiment with painting more loose instead of realistically, or you can incorporate an additional medium to your painting. Here, for example, I tried to paint the same scenery with watercolors twice, but I used different ways how I applied the paint. First, I used the wet and wet technique to create the sky and the flower field to make everything look more loose. And then I used a little bit white gouache and mixed it with my watercolors to make them opaque. This way, I was able to paint the poppy flowers and the darker grass to a few areas on top. I also added a few white dots for additional flowers and light reflections. There are so many different ways how you can paint something, so don't feel like you only have to stick to one way. Feel free to experiment and to explore new options. This way you'll discover new ways how to paint something while developing your own personal style. I sometimes get messages saying that you don't want to ruin your painting or that you're scared that the idea you have in your head wouldn't come out the way you imagine it. And I totally get that. But the only way you can turn your idea into reality is by testing and playing around until you find the best way how you can translate your idea onto paper. Here, for example, I really like the flower field, but I wanted to make the grass slightly lighter just to change the whole atmosphere. For me, it looked just way too gloomy. So I used the wet and white technique again to create the flowers and used lighter green for the grass. And then I sprinkled on clean water on top so the water pushes away the paint to create these lighter areas. So basically, I used the cauliflower effect to my advantage. I think this gives everything a nice airy and fluffy feel to it. Next, I just painted the sky the same way and added the mountain in the background. As you can see, just by experimenting with different watercolor techniques, you can make your painting look completely different. Don't be afraid to experiment. See every attempt and new painting as an opportunity for you to discover something completely new. Now, if you've been painting with only watercolors and you need to get out of a creative rut, why not trying out painting with a new medium like gouache? In watercolor painting, the water and paper kinda do half of the work for you, but with mediums like gouache, acrylics, or oil, you're in charge of where the paint goes. So you need to think about how and where you want to place the paint. So here, for example, I wanted to make the painting look bolder and more abstract. In gouache, you also have a lot of options on how you can create your painting. Some people like to use the medium to create art that looks more like flat vectors, and it looks really awesome. In my first attempt, I tried to do something similar, but rather use the pointillism technique where you create small dots that make up the whole painting. So I didn't focus on all the details and I didn't try to make the scenery look realistic. I rather wanted to convey the feeling of sunny weather and a poppy field. In my second attempt, I took this even further. I didn't create loose shapes of flowers, I only focused on the colors. So here, for example, you can see that I painted the sky in a similar way, but to create the poppy field, I only focused on green and red colors and applied the paint mimicking the flower field. This looks really abstract, but because of the sky, you could tell that the area below is probably a flower field. And to make it even more clear, you can also place something on top of the field like a windmill or a person walking through the field. Sometimes it's really not necessarily about making something more realistic, but about how you convey the message, what colors should you use, and how to place them inside your painting so the viewer can get the essence of your artwork. Next on my list of painting mediums I wanted to play around with was Posca pens. Now, I generally don't use markers or pencils a lot, so for me it's even more challenging because here you really need to think differently. First, I didn't have all the necessary colors, so I had to make it work somehow. And second, the paper was not the best for those pens, so it was rather difficult to paint on. Nevertheless, it challenged me to think outside the box again. Since I'm used to other mediums like watercolors, painting something with markers was completely different. How can I create the sky with clouds so it looks like sky? Or how can I paint a flower field without having to paint every single flower with the pen? I actually really liked my first attempt where I rather scribbled the painting. I know a lot of artists use Posca pens to create flat looking paintings similar to vectors as well, but it was really difficult to achieve on this paper, so everything turned out streaky. My second attempt was rather adventurous because I wanted to make it look even more abstract, but because I used red and this bright green color close to each other, they rather enhanced each other and looked really intense. I also create the sky a little bit differently, and I must say I'm not a fan, but sometimes you just need to experiment to see what you like the best. It was challenging for sure, but it was fun after all because I got to play around with a medium that I'm not used to, and it gave me new ideas. Last but not least, I used oil pastels. I bought them over 10 years ago or even longer, and I barely used them, so I thought, why not playing around with them today? And I actually really enjoyed it, and I think it was the most fun medium to play around with in this painting session. After all these different painting attempts, I figured the style I really enjoyed painting and that I wanted to recreate with oil pastels is the abstract style. Sometimes a specific art medium might translate your idea even better because it allows you to create exactly the same style and atmosphere you had in mind or haven't even thought about yet. Here I also wanted to paint more abstract because it just made more sense with these oil pastels. So what I did, I applied the paint in a similar way as with gouache, but because I could smudge everything using white oil pastels, which I accidentally discovered, I could turn the scenery into a dreamy looking painting. In my first attempt, I used darker colors and even played around with scratching out details, so it was really adventurous. And the second attempt, I rather focused on brighter colors and making the painting look dreamy. I think sometimes we can tend to focus on something that didn't work out and then get discouraged by that instead of seeing an opportunity in it. Because you can actually experiment with how you apply the paint, what techniques and style might work best. And by creating the same painting but using different mediums was so refreshing because every new medium challenged me to think outside the box and to adjust. And sometimes it's all we need to spark joy and new ideas. So if you feel like you're not excited about painting something, try using something else instead. Let me know in the comments what art medium you use the most and why, and what would you like to play around with more in the future? I would love to know. I really hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!